Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Elisa Sklar. I'm very happy to welcome you here today. We are going to be having an EDO roundtable. We're going to look at how different regions are planning for the COVID-19 economic recovery. Many of us still in this kind of stop phase, some of us moving out of it. We're going to take a look at what happens next. I'm really excited to have with us three different guests from around the US and Canada. We have Ryan Coleman from the City of Columbia, South Carolina Economic Development, Chris McLeod, the Director of Marketing and Communications from Edmonton Global, and Kirk Jenson, the Economic Development Director from the City of Logan, Utah. So we are really excited to have everyone here. We really appreciate you taking time out of your busy days. I know that it's been really nonstop for economic developers all over the world dealing with, the kind of unprecedented events of the last couple months. What I'd love to do then maybe is I'll start off. We've got Ryan. Maybe you'll begin first, and you can let us know a little bit about what's happening in the City of Columbia, South Carolina, and what kind of response you guys have had. What have you seen in your region? Let's see, make sure you're unmuted. You might be muted there still, Ryan. Oh, I still can't hear you. Are you able to unmute yourself? Let's see. We can hear you. So to do that, you need to click, Ryan, on the little microphone on your link, because we still can't hear you very well, or at all even. Oh, I don't think we can hear you. No. Okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give you a moment to figure this out. Why don't we do that, if that's okay? And Chris, if you feel comfortable, you can tell us a little bit what's going on in the Edmonton region. Let's see if we can get you unmuted.
Yeah, you bet. Okay, I should be unmuted.
Yeah, sounds good.
And do you want to flip it over so I can share my screen?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me make you the presenter here so you can show us what you have.
Okay, so you should be able to see a nice big red screen.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to use just a few slides, mostly just to keep myself focused. There's a few of them, but I'm going to go through them pretty quick here. So just knowing that there's probably a few people that don't know where the Edmonton metropolitan region is. We're in Western Canada. We're fairly close to the Rocky Mountains, and we're right on the edge of the major oil fields that exist in Canada. So we sit right on the edge of the third largest oil deposit in the world, and some of the largest oil and gas deposits. We've got lots of uranium, lithium, rich farmland, forests. So it's a pretty economically diverse region, and it's in many ways kind of the economic engine of the whole country in terms of producing raw materials. We're also a real hotbed for AI research. We've got 7 public universities here with about 130,000 students. And one of the areas where we're internationally known is in artificial intelligence. We're in the top 5 in the world for artificial intelligence research. And we've got that's really underpinning a lot of our other sectors and a lot of other industries. So we've got a lot on the go. And we've also have a really rich restaurant and cultural scene. This was from a review last year in the Independent from the United Kingdom, calling us Canada's most exciting culinary city. So we went from all of this economic, really growth, lots of restaurants, lots of activities on the go 3 months ago, to now being in a much more challenging place. So just in the month of March, we lost about 95,000 jobs in the food service industry. Western Canada Select, which is the oil that we produce the most of, on April 20th, it was trading at negative $38 a barrel, which is just staggering. And we're projecting unemployment to be somewhere in the range of 25% by the time we're all done. And then our economy, which right now, is quite strong and has been the strongest in the country for many years, is expected to contract by about 5.5%. And among some of the surveys we've done of our local business community, we expect around 50% of all businesses, not just to close, but to actually stay closed post COVID-19. So because we have so much of our economy connected to oil and gas, we're actually being hit with kind of a double whammy. It's the impacts of COVID and it's the impacts of energy that are happening really at the same time. And so just to give you a sense of how we're being affected compared to other Canadian provinces, Alberta is the one there in red. So we're projecting our annual change in GDP, to shrink pretty considerably this year. And these are numbers that were put together in March, and April is already looking a little worse than that. That's true with trade and export as well. Our region has been the strongest trade and export region in the country. We've had double our national average, about 10.8% growth over the last 10 years. But we're projecting a pretty significant back off of that this year. And that's in part because of not just changing demand and supply chains, but also because a lot of the changes that are happening in communities and countries around the world. And some of these numbers here really are just around things connected to COVID, but we're finding that across all kinds of sectors, whether it's airlines, M&As, which are projected to be down about 70%. We're seeing overall FDI projections being down anywhere from 30 to 40% this year, depending on who you're listening to. And most of those projections were based on, math and work being done in March. And so a lot of the world is actually, going to potentially be harder impacted than some of these figures. Within that, though, we are seeing areas that, that have either minimal decline or have growth. And these really are the areas where we're putting a lot of our focus. So you can see in that little green box there, the different areas where there is growth, and we're finding still interest from companies, still interest from some site selectors, especially ones coming out of China, a little bit out of Singapore, in these areas and in companies. Some of that is M&A, some of that is greenfield, but we're still seeing some luck. There's a whole bunch of different scenarios that are out there for what the recoveries could look like. Right now we're thinking if we're lucky, it'll be kind of around that column 5 or 6 in the black, because we've had really quite good public policy interventions, and so far our numbers are pretty low. But anybody who thinks that this is going to be a normal V or an L, it's probably going to be more oscillating. So we're trying to really figure out what does that look like and how does that work for us. And so one of the things we've done is we've created a white paper called Road to Recovery, which we've shared with our provincial government, and we're doing some other work at the federal level to figure out what can we do immediately to stabilize supply chains, what can we do around win-win investments, and what can we do to enhance resiliency and support, especially of our small and medium-sized enterprises. We've been very fortunate at both the federal and the provincial level that our governments have put a lot of effort into small businesses, keeping them up and running. There's been a lot of work to actually cover rents for small businesses. If the rent is less than $50,000 a year, the government will cover up to 75% of their rent. If a small business has lost more than 30% of the revenue, our federal government is covering 70% or 75% of their payroll, which is really helping a lot of businesses. And then there's other work being done at the provincial level for people who've been laid off. There's $2,000 a month right now for basically everybody who's been out of work, whether they're small business, independents, contractors, or more traditional employees. So it's really catching a larger spectrum of people. And even students. There's a program for students that typically be looking for summer work, where it's $1,500 a month to help them out of the federal government. So I think for the most part, we're slowing down the bleeding. I think it's almost impossible to stop it. But we're really trying, I think, as a region, as a province, and a nation, to set ourselves up to recover from this once things start to change. We can start to open things up, but we think we're probably still quite a long ways away from reopening. There'll be a little bit of probably careful scaling back over the summer, a little bit more in the fall, and then more of a riding the wave as we go, where we'll open some things, close some things, open some things, close some things. We're really working closely with all of our municipal partners. So there's 15 municipalities in our region that work together through Edmonton Global. We're also working with the other communities in our province, and we're part of a network of communities across the country that are working together to try to coordinate our approach and to give advice back both to the provincial governments and the federal government. And that's really been working well. We do an update, a written update 3 times a week to about 90 different groups in our region. And those groups can actually submit ideas and updates on what's going on. We do a weekly call with that same group plus a few others where we give about a half an hour of quick updates and people can flag issues that are arising. We're also giving regular briefings with our regional mayors and councils, so they have a chance to ask questions and flag issues and things that are coming. You know, one of the things we discovered through that is the challenge that our universities and colleges are going to face. Our systems here, across most of Canada are public, and international students have been a big piece of keeping kind of revenues moving across those institutions. And schools right now are very concerned about having dramatic drop-offs or possibly even no international students next year. So we're doing some work with those colleges and universities to figure out, what does that look like for them, and how do we make sure that they've got what they need to, to stay afloat over the next, couple of years as we do this. And we've got another white paper coming out soon that's going to be our next piece of giving advice and feedback to levels of government on coming out of this and rebounding. So that's kind of my quick walkthrough of what we've got on the go. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. Yeah, lots to think about. Very interesting. I appreciate you taking the time to share that. Ryan, let me pass this over to you. Let's see, I'll take back the presentation. There we go. Let's see, Ryan. Let's see if we can hear you now.
Is it working okay?
Yes, excellent. We've got audio. Thank you.
Of course, we seem to be operating in the age of if it can go wrong, it will go wrong. So as soon as it comes time for me to talk, my computer completely froze up. So we talked about this a little bit beforehand, though. I guess it was kind of to be expected. So from the city of Columbia side, I think we moved pretty swiftly to kind of try to pivot and deal with the incoming issues that we saw getting ready to happen with the COVID virus. And we've got a very progressive mayor, Mayor Steve Benjamin, a very responsive city council. And so we were really kind of, as far as South Carolina goes, we were at the forefront on kind of a lot of things in the state with regards to putting a shelter in place for the city. Within a very short time frame, of us kind of getting some briefings on this and understanding kind of what was coming down the pipeline and what we could expect from the virus standpoint, we took action at the city to, first thing we did was we moved to get a survey instrument out on the streets, really trying to figure out very early on the level of magnitude that our businesses were going to be impacted. And so we worked together along with our city's Office of Business Opportunities to really try to get that survey out there and distribute that out and really start to kind of figure out, who all is being, hit by this, which is kind of everybody at the same time, who's getting the worst of it, which was generally most of our smaller employers, and to be early on to kind of tell, your salons, gyms, places of that nature where you really have a lot of degree of person-to-person contact are really going to kind of have the most impact. And so from that, we were able to kind of turn and put it in pretty short order. I'd say within about a week and a half, we were able to put together a small business forgivable loan program at the city. Now, this probably isn't rocket science by any means. I know we've seen some other communities out there that were able to mobilize and do that in short order. I believe Birmingham, Alabama may have been one of the first ones that we saw. But what City Council did was we did a transfer from our water and sewer system, and we took about $6 million out of that and put that into a variety of resources. Some of it went to public safety, to the police department. A lot of it went towards just city infrastructure. We needed things for people to be able to work remotely. So we had to purchase a lot of new laptops and city cell phones in short order to prepare people to kind of work on a rotating basis. About 1.5 million out of that 6 million we took and we put into this loan program. And so what we did was our Office of Business Opportunities already kind of has a program for forgivable loan. We took their forgivable loan program, we put the money through that, basically using the processes that they already had in place. We took the combined staff, which was the Office of Business Opportunities. My staff actually worked with them as well in doing pre-application take-ins for people, working on them to make sure that people were getting their documents submitted, making sure that the folks that were applying and getting the money were actually within the city limits and they qualified. I worked on a loan panel myself, and so, you know, in about 2 weeks' time, we were able to process about $1 million worth of loans out the door to over 220 businesses. On top of that, City Council decided to take the remaining $500,000 and reallocate that towards this program as well. And so we're going to put about another sum total right now, it'll be about $1.4 million out the door and get those into the hands of businesses. It is a forgivable loan program, so for the most part, it's going to be allocated, you know, towards rent, utilities. We do make some allowances, you know, for use towards insurance, payroll. So kind of a good stopgap measure for us. We were really trying to identify the businesses, the small businesses that would have the greatest need. You know, folks who might not be able to qualify for the EDO loans or the PPP program, you know, so really looking for that gap of, you know, larger businesses who, you know, are going to have the assets and resources to kind of weather the storm on their own, you know, and then certain businesses weren't allowed to qualify. So franchises weren't allowed, hotels weren't allowed, businesses that had started within the past year were not allowed to qualify as well. We were really just kind of trying to find the businesses in the bubble, those that were established, that were small, and hopefully had the kind of the best opportunity for survival coming out of this. I mean, you know, when I think about the situation that we're in, I always kind of think of, you know, the medical drama TV shows like Code Black or something like that. So you've got a triage situation here. The bus is overturned on the 85. They're bringing in, you know, ambulance after patients from a business perspective, and you really have to start to determine, you know, who's savable at the end of the day. How many businesses can we get over the hump and at least, you know, get them 2 or 3 months from now to still having their doors open? Because if the businesses don't have their doors open 2 or 3 months from now, then you're not going to have employment opportunities for people to go back to once unemployment runs out. So that's been the main bulk of our program. I would say our office has also done a lot working directly with small businesses, the local business associations. We've got 6 of them in Columbia. And from day one, what we really wanted to do working with them was to kind of keep a line of communication going with the businesses. And we noticed early on that there were some groups that were popping up that were kind of trying to put together listings of available businesses and service availability. And nobody really seemed to be doing a good job of that. And so we leveraged our relationships with business associations because they could kind of give us a lot better access to a larger base of businesses in a short time frame. And so ever since this started, we've been running an available business listing. You know, folks are particularly interested in supporting restaurants, especially, and a lot of folks are doing, you know, takeout, delivery, curbside pickup service. So looking at our web traffic of where we've gotten the most action over the past month and a half, it's definitely been on the listings of available businesses. Through working with y'all, actually, with GIS planning, we were able to start that. I think that's one of the things that led to kind of the creation of Zoom Business was y'all identified, you know, people out there that were listing businesses that were open. You had the mapping tool. We were all able to kind of come together and to take that available business listing and now put it in an interactive map format so that people can put that on their websites. And so we just rolled our version out at the middle of last week, and we've already seen some pretty good traffic on that as well. The communities, you know, I'm sure as they are in Columbia, as they are everywhere else, are very supportive. They care a lot about small business. even with what's going on the virus, folks want to get out there and spend their money and support their small businesses. And so, this has just been kind of another avenue for us to help promote the availability of products of services in Columbia. And we're continuing to work with our business associations to see, how we continue to refine that approach and work with them on that going forward. I think this will continue to evolve from our standpoint. Down the road, we would like to have a grand reopening of Columbia at some point where we're able to kind of celebrate coming out of this to some degree, but do so in a safe and responsible manner, obviously. And so we're kind of thinking that through that exercise with them of obviously the ability to open sooner is directly correlates with the safety measures that you can put in place with your businesses. And so we're kind of trying to figure out what enhanced sanitation or service techniques that we can help them come up with that may allow us to try to reopen our business environment sooner rather than later. And we think it will continue to evolve even after that into a larger, shop local type effort. We've got a bunch of different ideas that my staff's been working on putting together. And so we're vetting that right now. We think it should be more than just like a month or two program. We really want to create something that lives and breathes and supports the local small businesses in the city of Columbia long-term going forward.
Thank you, Ryan. So many interesting things to say. I know that you guys were one of the catalysts behind our Zoom business mapping directory tool for open businesses. And in fact, Chris, I know you guys in Edmonton were one of the first in Canada to have it. So we always say we get our best ideas from our clients. I know we've had some questions come in, but Kirk, I want to hear from you. I'd love to hear from you about what's happening in the city of Logan in Utah. What's your experience been?
You bet. Just to provide a little context of where we're at, our community, Logan is a college town. It's home to Utah State University. We're situated about 90 miles or an hour and a half drive time northeast of Salt Lake City. So we've got a good mix of manufacturing businesses, tech businesses, and we've been fortunate, I guess, here. As far as the impact of the coronavirus, certainly people are getting hammered just like they are everywhere else around the world. From a health perspective, we've only had, I think, about 40 cases of coronavirus here in our county. In our broader region, about 60 cases. So that's pretty muted. There again, I think contributing to that is our governor. He came out early with, put together a task force of health professionals and governmental leaders to kind of really take a quick and hard approach to, limiting businesses and those kind of and places that are open. Our mayor likewise, shut down the playgrounds, keeping the kids off of the playground equipment where you might get some germs being transmitted from one person to another. So I think the response was good, effective. We're cautious, just like everyone else. As we talked earlier, we've been in that kind of code red environment where it's urgent, it's extreme. People are working from home. Our city hall's closed. I'm working from home, like you can see Ryan and Chris and Alyssa are today. So we've been doing those kind of things. Fortunately, and I've heard those stories as I've talked to people. Unfortunately, right at the outset of this, a woman that owns a cafe here locally, she had to furlough some people, was sort of in dire straits. What do I do? I just, haven't owned this business very long. So what we've tried to do is really direct people to the information out there. The CARES Act that the federal government came out with, our state has its own resources. So we've tried to, inform people, put that on our website. Our local Chamber of Commerce and our Small Business Development Center have done a great job of messaging out, creating that awareness of programs and helps that are available. So there again, we've seen the impact. It's kind of that surreal feeling. You've probably noticed it in your communities too. I drive around town and I see construction projects moving forward, and it's kind of like business as normal, but there again, traffic's down. Our students are home. Utah State, all the students are just doing online. They're in finals this week, so you don't have all the people out there. Retail stores shut down, so you get that kind of a cross feel of reality, as you know, life is normal and not so normal. But you know, on the food side, we've seen a lot of creativity. Our a cluster of radio stations really got behind the restaurants and did a big promotion of multiple restaurants, just really promoting them as far as pickup and delivery kind of thing. And if you drive around town, it's great to see. It's almost like a different contagion, right? Where people want to support their local businesses as much as possible. So I see a lot of you know, activity at the restaurants, curbside pickup, and those kind of things. So as far as projects, my sense is that projects and relocation, expansion type stuff, those kind of projects with developers that were already, those conversations were already happening. I see those continuing. I don't see those being deterred. Obviously, there's a degree of caution as far as how they're evaluating a market and the timing of when they, you know, want to go forward. But those conversations are happening. What I've seen more of a damper on, in our area at least, is new projects coming in and people looking. It's that seems to have been muted quite a bit. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what we're seeing. But as far as messaging, like I said, we really rely on a group approach. The state messaging's been fantastic, local. We're just trying to keep people informed, direct them to those resources, and then we'll monitor conditions as we move, like I say, to an orange state where we're starting to ease restriction. That comes Monday. This coming Monday, here locally, we'll start to see restaurants being open, not completely, but you will be able to dine in with some spacing of tables and that sort of thing. So, you know, maybe a different situation than what we see in other parts of the country, but I think people are being very careful and measured as far as what they're trying to do.
Thank you, Kirk. That's a lot to think about, and it's encouraging to hear that site selection projects that had already begun or been established, or that you're seeing those continue, that maybe there's a little bit of caution on the new ones happening, but right. Encouraging to hear that. One of the things that I heard actually from all three of you in different ways was this idea of collaboration, collaboration with member organizations, maybe your universities, with the Chamber of Commerce. I know, Chris, you spoke about this kind of regular opportunities for collaboration, phone calls, and those things are happening. I guess we're all learning from each other, right? We're all watching to see what different places are doing. Would you say that this has expanded the kinds of collaboration that's happening in your region, or were these systems already in place? Open to any of you who wants to jump in. Sure, Chris. Oh, you're muted. You might just want to unmute yourself. Sorry.
There we go. For us, we had some of this in place, but it is really just, you know, kind of put gas on the fire. So we're doing way more than we used to. Partners are way more interested in doing it. And that spirit of collaboration is absolutely there. One of our other cities in Canada, Halifax, put a really good COVID-19 webpage up at the very early days of this, that I think probably, I don't know, a dozen or so other communities, including us, learned from and kind of copied with, you know, with permissions. So there's been a lot of that type of work too, where it's, if somebody does something good, you know, they're quick to say, hey, we're finding this is working, and then it's spreading like wildfires. Other people pick it up and also use it. So I think we're going to come out of this, you know, stronger as a community, but it's, you know, it's that willingness to share.
Important. Ryan or Kirk, I don't know if that's something that you've seen kind of increase, or do you feel like those systems were in place? Are there new opportunities for collaboration, communication?
I would say in our area, similar to what Chris said, we've had very good knitting together of organizations and agencies throughout the state and here locally. But because of COVID-19, that the volume of communication, the frequency has been, tenfold. So
That's great to hear.
Yeah, same with us. I mean, one of the good things to come out of this is it's really galvanized Columbia as a community. We have a lot of organizations here, governmental 501c3. Sometimes it can be a bit of a competition type model. Where in the case of the business associations, there are 6 of them, and they're kind of competing for their retail and restaurant interests. But it really gave us a common cause to throw a lot of weight behind and say, it doesn't matter, who we can positively impact. Everybody needs as much help as we can give them right now. And so let's just really get behind all this together. Let's share information. Let's share resources. Let's continue to cross promote each other as much as we can. And so it's really, if nothing else, it's been a great kind of team building exercise for the community. So that part, at least, we're thankful for.
I'm glad to hear that. That's interesting. I know one of the big conversations that seems to be happening right now is about the shift in procurement strategies and supply chains, and I guess moving from offshoring to nearshoring. Certainly in how that will impact things like foreign direct investment is interesting, but I'm wondering if you're seeing this kind of new synergy or problem solving regionally happening around those supply chain shifts, or I like the t-shirt, Ryan, the buy local. I'm wondering if people are kind of moving more towards the sensibility of looking nearby or regionally to change how those things work.
Maybe more so outside of the city of Columbia. Our focus has really been on small business, restaurant, retailer. We tend to work a lot more, with office users, and I don't know that they have had some of the impact that you might see in some of the manufacturers outside of the city of Columbia. Our major, business cluster in Columbia is insurance, technology, and services. Government and professional services, and a lot of the change for those folks has just been from going into the office to working remote now. So that may be more relevant in some of the businesses that are moving goods in and around Columbia, out in Richland County. But for the most part, a lot of our office users have just kind of shifted their workspace, and I'm not saying that they won't see some kind of impact of that nature down the road. It has just not hit them yet.
Okay, thank you. I understand what you're saying, the city versus the region maybe being a little bit of a different situation. I'm wondering, Chris, for you guys at Edmonton Global, definitely FDI is your focus. What do you see happening?
Yeah, so maybe I'll touch on the supply chain piece first. So we're definitely seeing impacts on global supply chain in pretty much every sector, from the meat packing plants that are being impacted. And there's so much that goes back and forth between Canada and the US in particular. I think one of the highlights we've had is our international airport has just really deep roots and relationships with other communities and businesses around the world. So we've actually really seen a lot of increase in our cargo capacity, especially coming in from China. And we've been able to do, or at least maintain, a lot of those really strategic connections into our region and into the country. So a lot of like the N95 masks and other things, a lot of those are coming in through our community and then spreading out across Canada and to some extent into other parts of North America. And part of that too is that one of the companies we have here is PrimeEd, which are one of the leading manufacturers of hospital and other protective equipment. So those connections and the facilities that they operate in China and in Mexico and then of course here will really play an integral role in that. Where we've seen, I think, some interest from government around localizing. One of them is agriculture, and the other one is around pharmacare. So drug manufacture, vaccines, that part of research. I think most of us didn't realize just how much of that work is being done in China and in India, and even the work that's done in India, mostly the inputs are coming from China. So we're trying to, figure out how do we localize some of that work. We have, we're really fortunate. We've got some great universities and partners that have a lot of work in vaccine development, drug manufacturing, testing. So now we're trying to say, okay, how do we build that capacity, not just for Canada, but for North America here, so we're less reliant on other countries.
I know we've gone a little bit past the time, but Kirk, I just wanted to check in with you and see if there was anything in terms of the support of the local businesses in your community. I know you talked about things that the newspapers were doing to support them. Is there anything else that you want to say about what is going to mean for them going forward?
You mean for the local businesses?
Yeah, to help them with the reopening and the period going forward as an orange, an orange region, orange state, and the reopening. Like, what do you think is really going to make a big difference for them and supporting them?
My sense is I've talked with various business owners, in our area, in our city. My sense is, for the most part, and I'm not saying in all cases by any stretch, because there's some that are hurting and everyone's feeling impact, but for the short term, I think the majority are weathering it, fairly well. I think where the concern comes, or the deeper concern, is if it's a prolonged shutdown effect, where, now I've got to go not just weeks, but months or several months without, with reduced revenues and all types of overhead. New business leads are tougher to generate, in that kind of an environment. So I think that's where the concern is. So we're hopeful, where we're moving from red to orange, like I said, that effort will go well. I mean, obviously it will require day-to-day monitoring. And if COVID-19, instances of that start ramping up, I'm sure there'll be a curtailment of the effort to reopen. But it's going to be a day-to-day process, and continuing to point people in the direction. When I have conversations, I say, have you applied for this type of assistance, the payroll protection plan, or whatever it may be. So our hope is that people are getting plugged into those resources, and that we hope for the best, that we can resume more normal activity sooner versus later.
Thank you. Well, one of the things that I have seen from all three of your organizations, I think is fantastic, many economic developers and chambers and government organizations at all levels, is as aggregators of information. I mean, there's all these support programs coming from governments at different levels, from different chambers and different associations and public-private partnerships. And I think people are really looking to you, to your organization, to aggregate them and help them make sense of that. So I think that's really just absolutely been phenomenal. And the other thing I really want to say is that opportunities like this for people to talk to each other from different regions, as everyone reopens in different ways, we're all going to be watching to see what happens economically, what happens, of course, in terms of public health. But being able to share that in this capacity, I think, is extremely valuable. And I know there are some other questions that we didn't get a chance to answer. I know we've gone a little bit over time. I want to thank you all so much for taking the time to talk to us today. You will all get a link to the recording of today's session. With your permission, Chris, Kirk, and Ryan, I'm going to put your contact information in the follow-up email in case people want to reach out to you and learn a little bit more about the initiatives in your area. Thank you. Thank you all very much. And thanks to all of you who've attended. We've had really just great turnout today, and I appreciate you all taking time out of your busy days. We will be running this as a regular series with different economic developers from all over. I wish you all good health, of course, and I wish you all continued courage in the work that you are doing for your communities. You really are making things better for the people around you, and it is very much appreciated. So thank you very much, and have a great day. And we'll see you back. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.